You have met someone like this. Maybe you are thinking of them right now. They were warm, attentive, perfectly timed. They said the right things. They showed up in exactly the right ways. And somewhere deep in your gut, something felt off, but you could not name it. You could not point to a single thing they did wrong, not one specific moment, not one provable lie. That is because they did not make mistakes in front of you. Not yet, and that was never an accident. Identification. These are not the obvious ones, not the people who show their temper in week 2 or contradict themselves before the first month is over. The people who hide their true intentions perfectly are different. They are patient. They are studied. They understand that the fastest way to get what they want is to first become exactly what you need. And here is what makes this so disorienting. They are often the most present person in the room, the most interested, the most generous at first. They remember your birthday, your coffee order, the name of your childhood dog. They make you feel seen in a way very few people ever have. That feeling, that is not chemistry, that is architecture. Science validation. Psychologists have been studying this for decades. Dr. Robert Hare, a criminal psychologist at the University of British Columbia, spent 40 years researching what he called social chameleons, people with a specific set of traits that allow them to mirror, adapt, and conceal with extraordinary precision. His research found that these individuals are not operating on instinct, they are operating on strategy. What makes them so effective is something researchers call high self-monitoring. A study by psychologist Mark Snyder found that certain people scan their social environment constantly, adjusting their behavior, their tone, their entire presentation to match what each situation demands. Most of us do this to some degree, but high self-monitors do it at a level that is almost surgical. They do not just read the room, they become the room. Deeper root cause. But where does this begin? Because nobody is born concealing themselves this perfectly. For many of these individuals, hiding was a survival skill long before it became a social weapon. Developmental psychologists trace this back to what attachment theorists call an anxious, avoidant environment. A childhood where expressing genuine needs came with consequences, where love was conditional, where the version of yourself that kept the peace was the version that stayed safe. Dr. John Gottman's research on emotional environments found that children raised in homes with high unpredictability learn to suppress authentic expression before they can fully process what authentic even means. They do not just learn to hide from others, they learn to hide from themselves. What starts as protection becomes a pattern, and the pattern over time becomes a personality. The honest complication. Now here is where it gets complicated, because not everyone who conceals their intentions is dangerous. Some people hide because they have been punished for honesty. Some hide because vulnerability has been used against them so many times that openness no longer feels like an option. Some hide because the world has not yet shown them that it is safe to be fully seen. That is not manipulation. That is self-preservation. But there is a line, and the line is this. Concealment that protects you is different from concealment designed to take something from someone else. Researchers distinguish between strategic self-presentation, managing how you come across, and deceptive intent, where the goal is to gain access, trust, or power by keeping someone else permanently in the dark about who you actually are. One is human, one is harmful, and the difference is not always obvious from the outside. That is the point. Reframe. So how do you spot it? Here is something that might surprise you. You did not miss the signs because you were naive. You missed them because someone worked very hard to make sure you would. A 2021 study published in the Journal of Personality found that individuals who scored highest on strategic social concealment were specifically skilled at suppressing the micro-expressions that typically alert others to deception. In other words, they do not just lie, they train themselves not to leak the truth. But here is what the research also found. Your nervous system caught it anyway. That low-level discomfort you felt. That pause when something they said 3 weeks ago did not quite line up with something they did yesterday. That moment when their eyes did not match their words. That was not overthinking. That was your threat detection system doing exactly what it was designed to do. A study from Harvard's psychology department found that people who experience relational betrayal develop significantly stronger intuitive accuracy in detecting incongruence afterward. You became better at reading people precisely because someone once made it so hard to read them. Vocabulary Reframe Society has a name for the feeling you had around this person. They call it doubt. They call it overthinking. They call it trust issues. Here's a better word. Discernment. Doubt assumes you are wrong. Discernment assumes you are paying attention. And there is a profound difference between the two. Because the people who hide their intentions perfectly are counting on you calling it doubt. They are counting on you talking yourself out of what your body already knows. Every time you said, maybe I'm being too sensitive, that was the strategy working exactly as designed. You were not too sensitive. You were too close to someone who needed you not to trust yourself. That is not a flaw in you. That is the signature of them. Direct affirmation. If this is bringing someone specific to mind right now, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not foolish for not seeing it sooner. You are not weak for having trusted them. You are not broken for the time it took to understand what was actually happening. You were up against someone who had spent years, possibly a lifetime, perfecting the art of becoming exactly what people needed them to be. That is not a failure of your judgment. That is evidence of how sophisticated the concealment was. You are not gullible. You are human. And you were in close proximity to someone who had learned very early exactly how to use that humanity against you. Forward direction. So where do you go from here? Research from UCLA's Brain Mapping Center found that people who experienced high deception relationships showed increased activation in the brain's interior insula, the region associated with gut instinct and social intuition. Following those experiences, in simple terms, you got sharper, not harder, not closed off. Sharper. You do not have to become someone who trusts no one. You do not have to build walls so thick that the good people cannot find their way in either. What you have earned through everything that confused you, unsettled you, and eventually made sense is clarity. The ability to sit with someone and let their actions speak longer than their words. The patience to let time do what charm cannot fake indefinitely. The quiet confidence to say something feels off here and mean it, even when you cannot explain it yet. That is not damage. That is wisdom, and it belongs entirely to you. Protect your peace.